My name is Natalie Carter, and I'm 33 years old. What happened at my sister's wedding is still being whispered about across the entire business community. Picture this: 300 guests inside a glittering ballroom, a live band, chandeliers, champagne, and then my mother's hand striking my face so hard that my diamond earring flew across the marble floor. Why? Because I refused to hand over the keys to my $3 million penthouse, right there, in the middle of her reception speech. But here's the part no one saw coming. An hour later, the CEO of one of the largest investment firms in Seattle walked through those ballroom doors, and my mother's scream could be heard 3 floors above. That man wasn't just any CEO. He owned 40% of my father's company, Carter and West Capital. And he had something very specific to say about what he had just witnessed on a live stream. Before I tell you about that party and the slap I got from my mom, please take a second to like and subscribe to this channel, only if you believe in stories of justice finally being served. And let me know where you're watching from and what time, because I actually read every comment. Now then, let me take you back to that morning. The morning I thought I was just attending my sister's perfect wedding. I arrived at the Evermont Grand Hotel at 8 a.m., 3 hours before the ceremony. The ballroom shimmered like something out of a bridal magazine. White roses, golden ribbons, every corner polished until it gleamed. Exactly what Isabella Carter had dreamed of since we were little girls. I had contributed $80,000 to make that dream come true, though of course no one would ever mention that. "Natalie," my mother finally said, her eyes scanning me from head to toe. "That dress. Couldn't you have chosen something softer? You look like you're walking into a board meeting, not your sister's wedding." I smoothed the navy silk of my dress. Elegant, professional, maybe too much so. "Good morning to you too, Mom," I said quietly. She didn't even acknowledge the greeting. Instead, she sighed. "Look at Isabella. She's glowing, a real bride." The comparison wasn't new. It never was. For 33 years, I'd been the daughter who was too ambitious, too independent, too masculine in her choices. Isabella was the princess. Sweet, traditional, everything our parents had ever wanted in a daughter. "Natalie, could you check the seating chart again?" my father called out from across the ballroom. "But don't rearrange anything this time, please." I bit my tongue. The seating plan was a disaster. Divorced couples placed side by side, rival business partners forced to share a table. But pointing that out would only make me difficult again. They didn't know, because I'd never told them, that I wasn't just some mid-level manager at a random firm. I was vice president of global development at Carter and West Capital, overseeing the entire Asia-Pacific expansion. But in this family, even that somehow counted as another failure. Too focused on work, too strong-willed, too much like the son they never had. "Of course, Dad," I said evenly, keeping my voice calm. "I'll make sure everything looks perfect for Isabella." "Family comes first, Natalie," he reminded me, appearing beside me as I straightened a crooked centerpiece. "You'll understand that when you finally settle down." "You'll understand once you have a family of your own," my father added. "When you finally settle down." It was a subtle jab, but it landed exactly where he wanted. At 33, my single status was treated as a failure far greater than any professional success could ever redeem. "Robert, leave her be," Aunt Marjorie said with a tone that sounded more entertained than defensive. "Not everyone is as lucky as Isabella, finding true love so young." I focused on the centerpiece again, letting their voices wash over me like background noise. Around us, relatives whispered their judgments behind crystal glasses and polite smiles. Still no ring on Natalie's hand. After all those years in the city, you'd think she'd meet someone by now. Poor Elaine. At least she'll have a grandchild soon, thanks to Isabella. From across the room, my cousin Kevin snorted. "Hey, Natalie," he called out loud enough for everyone to hear. "Maybe if you spent less time in boardrooms and more time in bedrooms, you'd have a family too." Laughter rippled through the relatives like static, Warm, easy laughter, the kind that burns cold when it's aimed at you. I wanted to tell them about the 3 men I dated this year, all of whom couldn't handle being with a woman more successful than them. I wanted to say that being single was a choice, not a failure. But what would be the point? My mother was already explaining, loudly enough for half the room to hear, that I was just too picky for my own good. I adjusted another crooked centerpiece, my hands steady despite the familiar sting of being dismissed. They didn't know who I really was, and maybe that was for the best. "So, Natalie," chirped Aunt Janet during the pre-ceremony mingling, "how's that little apartment of yours in the city? Must be cozy." "It's a penthouse, actually," I corrected gently. The crowd around us burst into polite laughter. "Oh, a penthouse." Aunt Janet wiped a tear from her eye. "Natalie and her big city dreams, she's always exaggerating." Isabella floated by in her wedding gown, beaming. "Last year she said she was buying a Tesla. Can you imagine?" I had bought a Tesla. It was parked right outside, but I only smiled. "Natalie's always been ambitious," my mother added, in that tone that made ambitious sound like a character flaw. "Truly, too ambitious." "There's nothing wrong with a modest apartment," Uncle Edward added, his tone dripping with condescension. "Not everyone can afford luxury, you know. Nothing to be ashamed of, kid." My phone buzzed. A notification from the front desk of my building, confirming tomorrow's delivery to my 4,500 square foot penthouse on the 45th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a panoramic view of the Seattle skyline, a home I'd paid for in full after closing the Tokyo deal. I could have shown them photos. I could have pulled up the virtual tour I'd saved. I could have mentioned the Architectural Digest feature from last month. But what would that prove? That I still needed their approval? "You're right, Uncle Edward," I said instead, my voice calm. "Nothing wrong with living within your means." Isabella laughed, that perfect tinkling sound she'd mastered years ago. "See, Mom? Natalie's finally learning to be realistic." The irony was almost poetic. I stood by the ballroom window, staring at the city skyline, the same skyline my penthouse towered above. 10 years. That's how long it took me to climb from entry-level analyst to vice president. 10 years of 80-hour weeks, red-eye flights, and deals that made headlines in the Financial Times. That penthouse wasn't just property, it was proof. Proof that the girl they once dismissed had built something extraordinary. Proof that I didn't need their approval, their money, or their connections. Every square foot was paid for, with my own success. If I handed it over to Isabella, if I gave her those keys like it was some party favor, what would that make me? The family's permanent backup plan. Their walking ATM, existing only to fund the golden child's happiness. I thought about the nights I fell asleep at my desk, working on proposals that would bring in millions for the company. The promotions I'd earned while they planned engagement parties for Isabella. The respect I'd gained in boardrooms across 3 continents. None of it mattered here. To them, I was still just Natalie, too masculine, too career-focused, too difficult. And if I gave in now, if I surrendered the one thing that symbolized my independence, I'd be proving them right. Everything they believed about my place in this family would become true. My phone lit up with a message from my assistant, a photo, taken from my penthouse that very morning. The sun rising over Seattle, gold light spilling through those massive glass windows. She'd added a caption, "Your sanctuary awaits, ma'am." Sanctuary. That's exactly what it was. The one place where I wasn't someone's disappointing daughter or someone's overshadowed sister. It was where I was simply me, Natalie Carter, the woman who built something remarkable on her own. I couldn't give that up, not even for the illusion of family peace. Across the ballroom, I heard my mother's voice carry over the music. "Our Isabella," she said to a group of guests, glowing with pride. "She's everything a mother could ever hope for, so graceful, so giving." "You know, she volunteers at the children's hospital," my mother continued proudly, and she's going to make such a wonderful wife." The guests murmured their approval, all the proper, polite admiration expected in moments like these. She stood there glowing, reciting Isabella's list of virtues, her teaching degree, her perfect engagement, her charity work. Not once did my name touch her lips. 3 months earlier, when my father mentioned the wedding expenses, I'd quietly transferred $80,000 into their account. I'd used my connections to get the wedding featured in a prestigious bridal magazine, even arranged an upgraded honeymoon suite through my own hotel rewards. Invisible, that's what I was. The family ghost, summoned only when they needed something. "What a lovely family," someone said nearby. "You must be so proud of your daughters." "Oh, we are," my father replied, wrapping an arm around my mother. "Isabella makes us so happy," he said, daughters as if there were only one. I turned away, but then I heard his voice drop, soft, but not soft enough. "After the toast," he whispered to my mother, "we'll make the announcement about the penthouse." "Are you sure Natalie will agree?" she murmured back. "She won't have a choice. Not in front of everyone. She's too proud to make a scene at her sister's wedding." My blood ran cold. They planned this. It wasn't some generous surprise. It was a setup. A perfectly orchestrated ambush designed to corner me, using social pressure and family obligation as their weapons. And then my mother said it, the kind of cruelty that sounded casual, but sliced straight through the chest. "She doesn't need a penthouse anyway," she murmured. "She doesn't even have a family to live in it." The words knocked the air out of me, but they also crystallized something inside. I wasn't going to play their game anymore. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, as if your achievements only mattered when they fit someone else's story, I see you. Your success matters, even when they refuse to recognize it. What happened next changed everything, the moment a private family dynamic exploded into a public humiliation. Before we continue, don't forget to like and subscribe if you believe in setting boundaries, in choosing self-respect over family approval. And tell me where you're watching from. I love connecting with people who understand that sometimes the hardest battles we fight are with the ones who were supposed to love us most. The reception was in full swing when my father stood up, tapping his champagne glass with a spoon. The band fell silent. 300 guests turned toward him. "Before we continue celebrating," he began, his voice carrying through the microphone, "Evelyn and I want to give Isabella and Ethan something truly special." My stomach twisted. They were really doing it. "As you all know," he continued with a practiced smile, "family means everything to us. There's nothing we wouldn't do for our children's happiness." Children, plural. But his eyes were locked only on Isabella. "That's why we're so thrilled to announce that Natalie has graciously agreed to gift her Seattle penthouse to Isabella as a wedding present." The room erupted in applause. Isabella pressed a hand to her chest, pretending to be shocked, though the small smile tugging at her lips told me she'd known all along. Ethan wrapped his arm around her, beaming. "Oh my God, Natalie!" Isabella gushed into the microphone. "Are you serious? The penthouse?" And just like that, 300 pairs of eyes turned toward me. I froze, champagne glass in hand, mind spinning. They had orchestrated this moment perfectly. The announcement, Isabella's rehearsed reaction, the public setting that made refusal seem almost cruel. "Natalie, come up here," my father called, waving me toward the stage. "Let's share this special family moment together." The applause continued. People smiled, nodded, some even wiped away tears at what they thought was a touching gesture. From where I stood, I could see my boss's wife at table 12, 3 major clients at table 8. My entire professional network scattered across the room, every one of them watching, waiting for me to smile and play the part of the generous sister. This wasn't just an ambush. It was a calculated assassination of my autonomy. I set my glass down, and slowly, I stood. The room went silent, the air thick with expectation. "I'm sorry, what?" I said, my voice clear even without a microphone. My father's smile faltered. The penthouse, sweetheart, he said gently, for Isabella and Ethan. This wasn't discussed with me, I said, my tone calm, measured, almost professional. A ripple of whispers spread through the crowd. My father's smile tightened, his face hardening beneath the ballroom lights. Don't be selfish on your sister's special day, he said, still holding the microphone, making sure everyone heard every word. Dad, this isn't appropriate, I replied, steady as glass. We can talk about this privately. There's nothing to talk about, he snapped. My mother snatched the microphone from his hand. It's a wedding gift. From the family, she declared. It's my property, I said simply. And I haven't agreed to anything. The whispers grew louder, fragments breaking through the hum. How could she do this? On her sister's wedding day? So selfish. Across the room, Isabella's eyes filled with perfectly timed tears. Natalie, she whispered into her mic, I just thought you wanted me to be happy. Your happiness doesn't require my home, I answered evenly. It's just real estate, she sniffled. Then you can buy your own, I said. A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom, sharp enough to cut glass. Someone at table 3 actually clutched her pearls. The wedding photographer kept clicking, his flash popping over and over, documenting every second of the disaster. Natalie, please, Ethan interjected, trying to sound like the peacemaker. We'll make sure it's well taken care of. I'm sure you will, I said softly. But the penthouse isn't available. My mother's face had turned a dangerous shade of purple. My father looked seconds away from a stroke. And Isabella, her sweet bride act was cracking. Something darker slipping through the seams. Come on, Natalie, Aunt Janet called out from across the room. It's family! You don't even have a family to fill that place, Uncle Harold added, his voice smug. Isabella needs it more. She's starting her life. She's right, someone else chimed in. What does Natalie need all that space for? The pressure was suffocating. Each comment another stone stacked higher around me, brick by brick, building a wall meant to trap me in shame. Be reasonable, my cousin Colin shouted. Stop being so difficult. Don't be so difficult, Aunt Margaret chimed in. It's not like you can't afford another place. Then came her little dagger, sweetly coated in sarcasm. With that big, important job of yours. The tone, unmistakably mocking. They still didn't believe I'd actually made it. Even now, they thought the penthouse was luck or exaggeration, not the result of a decade of sacrifice and grit. You're generous to assume that, I said quietly, my voice calm, even as the storm inside me raged higher. But my finances aren't exactly a topic for public discussion. Everything with you is about money, my mother snapped, her voice cutting through the microphone, echoing across the ballroom like a slap in itself. My sister's happiness should matter more than property, my mother snapped. If Isabella's happiness depends on taking what's mine, I said evenly, then maybe that's something we should all think about. More gasps. Someone in the back actually booed. The photographer kept shooting, his camera flash strobing across the room, turning the chaos into a storm of frozen light. Through it all, I kept my hands at my sides, no trembling, no tears, no. I'd negotiated with CEOs who devoured vice presidents for breakfast. I'd stood my ground in boardrooms where millions hung in the balance. I wasn't about to break now, not in front of the very people who had spent a lifetime breaking me down. The penthouse is not available, I repeated, each word sharp and deliberate. My purse buzzed. Once, then again, then again. I pulled out my phone, needing the brief distraction from the emotional minefield I was standing on. 3 missed calls from the event MC, and 1 new message. Live broadcast ready, standing by. Live broadcast. I scanned the room, and then I saw it. Ethan's younger brother had his phone propped up on table 6, streaming the entire reception live on Facebook. That tiny red live icon blinked like a taunt. How many people were watching this disaster unfold in real time? Another message from the event MC popped up on my screen. Your call. Just say the word, Victor Liang. My mentor. my boss, and, conveniently, the man who owned 40% of my father's company. Not that my father, Robert Carter, had any idea his silent business partner was the same man his daughter reported to. We'd kept that fact classified for exactly situations like this. "Natalie, put the phone away," my mother, Evelyn, hissed. "This is a family moment." "Apparently it's also public entertainment," I said calmly, nodding toward the live stream setup. "The family is broadcasting this to the internet." Ethan's brother scrambled to grab his phone, but the damage was already done. Who knew how many people had just watched my parents try to publicly force me into surrendering my own home? "Wait for my signal," I texted Victor back, then slipped the phone into my purse. So dramatic. Isabella sighed into her mic, playing the perfect victim once again. All this chaos, over one piece of real estate, I thought. I actually believed my sister loved me enough to want me to start her marriage on a good note. The crowd sided with her, of course. Poor, sweet Isabella, rejected by her cold, selfish sister. But then I noticed something. My father kept checking his phone. And each time his face grew a shade paler. The live stream, it had consequences he hadn't anticipated. "Your wedding's trending," I whispered to Isabella. "Congratulations." Standing there, surrounded by judgmental eyes and shallow sympathies, a memory resurfaced. 6 months earlier. Victor Liang, my boss and mentor, had insisted on adding an unusual clause to the penthouse purchase contract. "Trust me," he'd said, reviewing the paperwork. "It protects you from third-party interference, especially coercion from family members." I'd laughed back then. My family's difficult, not dangerous. But Victor, a man who'd built an empire from nothing, knew better. "If anyone tries to force you into transferring ownership," he explained, "that clause activates. The company holds first right of refusal and legal authority to intervene." The penthouse had originally been a corporate asset, transferred to me as part of my executive compensation. Every document was airtight, every signature traceable. That clause wasn't just about property law, it was protection against exactly this kind of manipulation. The penthouse had originally been a corporate asset, transferred to me as part of my executive compensation package. Every paper trail was flawless, every signature legal and binding. But that clause, Clause 15.3, I remembered it word for word. It granted Liang Global Investments the legal authority to intervene if anyone ever tried to coerce me into surrendering the property. It wasn't just about real estate law, it was about protection. For executives who'd been manipulated by the very families who thought they owned them. Victor had seen it too many times. Successful women forced to give up what they'd built to appease relatives who felt entitled to their success. "Natalie's always been stubborn," my father, Robert Carter, said to the crowd, trying to regain control of the chaos. "But family comes first. She knows that." "Family doesn't ambush family," I said quietly. But the words carried, sharp, cutting through the tension like glass. The room fell completely silent. Even the waitstaff froze mid-step, trays trembling in their hands as they watched the spectacle unfold. And as I stood there, surrounded by polite horror and hidden judgment, my thoughts drifted to the documents locked in Victor's office safe. Papers that didn't just outline my penthouse ownership, but the entire financial structure of Liang Global Investments itself. Those files in Victor's safe, they'd be very interesting to my father, if he ever discovered that his daughter was essentially the right hand of his silent business partner. Thank God for that clause. Victor had insisted on it. And then, my mother rose from the head table like a storm in pearls. Her gown shimmered under the chandeliers as she strode across the dance floor, microphone clutched so tightly her knuckles had turned bone white. "Natalie Carter," she declared, her voice slicing through the speakers, "you will not ruin this day. You will not humiliate this family." "I'm not the one making a scene, Mother," I said evenly. "We raised you better than this," she barked, closing the distance until she was barely a foot away. The vein in her temple throbbed with rage. "We gave you everything. We gave Isabella everything." "I earned what I have," I replied quietly. "I deserve it." "Ungrateful girl," she hissed under her breath, and then caught herself, remembering the audience. She straightened, pasted on that brittle, social smile. "Sweetheart," she cooed into the mic, Hand your sister the keys. It's such a small thing. No, the word hung between us, simple, steady, absolute. Her face twisted, disbelief giving way to fury, then humiliation. The entire ballroom held its breath. Are you really going to do this? My mother, Evelyn, hissed, lowering the mic for a brief, trembling moment. Or what? I asked softly. I'm curious, what exactly do you think will work this time? Her eyes flared. She lifted the microphone again, voice cracking through the speakers. Everyone, she said with a tight smile, my daughter seems to have forgotten what family means. Maybe you can all help remind her. A ripple of discomfort spread across the room. Some guests murmured support for Isabella, but others stayed silent, uneasy, sensing the line had been crossed. Give your sister the keys, she ordered, her voice dropping into a low, venomous whisper that still echoed through the mic. No, you selfish, ungrateful girl, she spat. After everything we've done, everything we've sacrificed, you still defy us? You're an embarrassment to this family. She moved closer, close enough for me to smell her perfume, the same suffocating floral scent from my childhood. And in that moment, it wasn't just her voice I could hear. It was every echo of disappointment, every word that had ever made me small. Then I saw it. All the years of resentment burning behind her eyes. The slap came without warning. Her hand struck my face so hard my head snapped to the side. A perfect, echoing crack that rippled through the ballroom, amplified by the microphone still clutched in her hand. My diamond earring, a gift I'd bought myself after closing the Singapore deal, flew off, spinning through the air in slow motion, before landing on the marble floor with a soft, crystalline ping. 300 guests gasped in unison. Then, silence. Absolute, deafening. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring, that turns your heartbeat into thunder. I stood completely still, cheek burning, heat radiating across my face. The photographers stopped shooting. The waitstaff froze mid-stride. Even the children at table 15 fell silent. My mother's hand hovered in the air, fingers trembling, as if she couldn't quite believe what she'd done. In her other hand, the microphone hung slack, catching her ragged breath. In the mirrored walls around us, I saw everything reflected. My flushed cheek, her stunned face, the horror spreading through the crowd like wildfire. My father, Robert Carter, was half standing on his chair, frozen mid-motion. Isabella had both hands over her mouth, genuinely shocked for the first time that day. Ethan's brother had lifted his phone again, capturing everything. The earring lay on the white marble, its diamonds catching the chandelier light from nearly 10 feet away. Something so small, and yet it suddenly felt like the most important object in the entire room. I didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even raise a hand to the side of my burning face. I just stood there, letting the silence do what words never could. Slowly, deliberately, I walked toward the fallen earring. Each click of my heel echoed through the ballroom, sharp, rhythmic, like a countdown. I crouched, picked it up, and carefully fastened it back in place. A simple action, 30 seconds at most, but it felt like 30 years. When I straightened, I smoothed the front of my dress, lifted my chin, and looked my mother, Evelyn, directly in the eye. Her hand finally dropped, but she still gripped the microphone, her expression shifting between defiance and dawning horror. I'm sorry, I said softly, my voice steady, unshaken. The kind of calm that terrifies people who expect you to break. Then I turned to the head table. Congratulations, Isabella, I said evenly. I hope marriage brings you the joy you're looking for. I picked up my clutch and began walking toward the exit. No rush, no stumble, just the steady, deliberate pace of someone leaving a boardroom she no longer respects. Natalie, my father called after me. Natalie, wait! I didn't stop, didn't turn. Behind me, the ballroom unraveled. Voices overlapping, chairs scraping, someone crying in the distance. But I kept walking. As I reached the doors, I pulled out my phone and dialed Victor Liang. He answered on the first ring. Natalie? Green light, I said simply. A pause. Then his voice sharpened. Understood. How long do you need? 45 minutes to get home. You okay? I touched my cheek, still hot, still stinging. Run the contingency plan, I said quietly. He was already moving. I could hear it in his voice. The legal team's on standby. I'll prep the shareholder agreement. Good, I said. Make sure you bring the original, the one my father never actually read. There was a beat of silence. Then softly, Natalie, are you hurt? It's nothing, I murmured, stepping into the elevator. It won't heal, but it's nothing. The doors slid shut, sealing off the chaos behind me. 300 people had witnessed the slap. But soon, the entire city would witness the reversal. Is your blood boiling yet? I know what humiliation feels like, especially when it comes from the very people who were supposed to protect you. But sometimes the best reaction isn't anger, it's strategy. What comes next is exactly why you should never underestimate someone you've pushed too far. If you believe in standing your ground, if you've ever had to draw a hard line with your own family, type boundary in the comments below. Because this is where everything changes, where the invisible daughter becomes the one holding all the cards. 45 minutes later, I was back in my penthouse, a cold pack pressed against my cheek. The city glittered below me, oblivious to the storm brewing above it. My phone buzzed, a text from Victor Liang. Entering the hotel now. I changed into jeans and a soft sweater. No armor, no pretense. The battle was already won. They just didn't know it yet. Another notification popped up. The live stream from Ethan's brother, shared over 500 times. The slap was already a looping GIF, a viral spectacle for strangers to dissect. But I didn't care about online fame. I cared about what was happening in that ballroom right now. Another buzz, another message from Victor. Entering now, Victor had texted. And then I could see it play out in my mind as clearly as if I were standing there. The grand doors of the ballroom swung open. Victor Liang, in a tailored Armani suit, walked in with that quiet, lethal confidence that made Fortune 500 executives step aside without a word. A $10,000 briefcase in one hand, 2 attorneys flanking him, each holding identical leather portfolios. The same Victor Liang whose name appeared on the cover of Forbes last quarter. The same man my father, Robert Carter, had spent 6 months trying, and failing, to secure a meeting with. Another buzz, a text from Ethan's brother. You need to see this. I stepped toward the floor-to-ceiling window, the city lights sprawling endlessly below. Somewhere down there, in that glittering ballroom, my family was learning a lesson about consequences. The phone rang again, a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Natalie, Ethan's brother whispered. You need to see this. Your dad. He looks like he's about to faint. The man in the suit. He just said your name. Something about a partnership agreement. Your mom screamed when she saw him. Who is he? I smiled faintly, eyes on the skyline. Someone who believes in protecting his investments, I said. From the other end, I heard chaos. My father repeating one phrase over and over. Mr. Liang? Mr. Liang? The realization hitting him too late. I have to go, I said softly, ending the call. The city sparkled beneath me, calm and indifferent. But somewhere below in that chandelier-lit ballroom, an empire was being rewritten. My phone rang again. This time it was Victor. I'm on speaker, he said, his tone calm but commanding. I'm here with your parents and their guests. Through the receiver I could hear it, that heavy, stunned silence that only comes when truth finally walks into a room. Then Victor's voice, sharp, controlled, carrying the authority of a CEO who made boardrooms tremble. I'd like to clarify something, he said, for everyone present. Natalie Carter is not merely an employee of my company. She is our Vice President of Global Development, the executive overseeing our entire Asia-Pacific expansion. A collective gasp rippled through the phone. That's impossible, my father's voice stammered, weak, disoriented. The Singapore deal, Victor continued evenly, brought in $65 million in revenue. Natalie led it. Our Tokyo division, now our most profitable branch, she built it from the ground up. And the partnership your company, Mr. Robert Carter, has been desperate to secure with Helios Electronics? A pause, a deadly pause. Natalie negotiated every single clause. You're lying, my mother's voice cracked, shrill, desperate. Mrs. Carter, Victor replied, tone tightening. Your daughter is one of the most valuable executives in this city. The penthouse you tried to seize is part of her executive compensation package, a package that includes certain protections. Protections? My father repeated, the word trembling. Yes, Victor said, his voice deepening. Protections that activate when someone attempts to coerce her into surrendering company property. And as of this moment, he paused, letting the silence slice through the air. That coercion has been recorded on a live stream that now has over 40,000 views. That is exactly what happened here tonight, Victor said. 40,000 views, in under an hour. And furthermore, his tone sharpened, as the holder of 40% of your company, Mr. Robert Carter, I am deeply concerned by the judgment you displayed this evening. publicly attempting to steal from your own daughter and allowing your wife to assault her. This raises serious questions about your fitness to lead. You can't, this is a family matter, my father stammered. The moment you made it public, Victor replied, you made it my matter. Natalie, are you still there? I'm here, I said clearly. Do you want to press charges for assault? The ballroom held its breath. Let me explain, Victor continued, voice resonant over the speakers. That live stream shows clear battery and an explicit attempt at coercion. This activates Clause 15.3 of our shareholder agreement. Clause what? My father croaked. Clause 15.3, Victor repeated, unhurried. Ethical turpitude and conduct inconsistent with leadership, page 47 of the agreement you signed 5 years ago. I can call an emergency board meeting within 24 hours. Given that I control 40% and the Harrington Trust controls another 15%, let's just say they're very interested in this situation. A rustle of paper carried through the phone, Victor setting documents on the head table, each page a quiet, legal hammer. This is blackmail, Evelyn screamed. No, Mrs. Carter, Victor replied smoothly, his voice unwavering. Blackmail is demanding your daughter's property in front of 300 witnesses. This, he paused just long enough for the silence to sting, is what accountability looks like. Please, my father's voice broke, pleading, make this stop. This has gone too far. Too far? I finally spoke, my tone calm and steady. Like slapping your daughter across the face in front of 300 guests? That kind of too far? You can't destroy our family over this, my father rasped. I'm not destroying anything, I said. I'm protecting my assets and my dignity. Victor's protecting his investment. If your behavior jeopardizes that, then that's on you. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered near the mic. It's all over social media. Twitter, Facebook, even the local news. Victor's voice rose again, measured, controlled. Here's what's going to happen. Robert, you have 48 hours to issue a public apology to Natalie, a real one, not a PR stunt. You will acknowledge her professional achievements and her rightful ownership of her property. Evelyn, you will do the same and you will stay away from her, permanently. Or what? Evelyn demanded, voice trembling with fury. Or, Victor said, his tone still measured, I'll exercise my rights as majority shareholder. Your company relies on my capital for its expansion project, Robert. Without it, you'll be facing bankruptcy within 6 months. This is my daughter's wedding, Evelyn's voice broke into a shriek. You can't do this here. You're right, Victor replied smoothly. This isn't the time or the place, which is why I'm giving you 48 hours to fix it. The penthouse, he continued, remains Natalie's, untouched, undisputed. Any attempt to manipulate, accuse, or coerce her again will result in immediate legal action. She's our daughter, Robert protested weakly. Then treat her like one, Victor snapped. Not like an ATM, not like a resource you can tap whenever you please. Somewhere in the background, Isabella began to sob. This was supposed to be my special day. It still is, Victor said calmly, because after tonight, everyone here will remember it. I'm leaving now. But these documents, he paused. They stay with you, Robert. Read them, understand them, and remember, Natalie isn't alone. She has the full weight of Liang Global Investments behind her. Silence followed, heavy, suffocating, final. Then, softly, I heard Isabella's trembling voice. How could you do this to me? I didn't do anything to you, Isabella, I said. I simply refused to give you my home. Everything else, the announcement, the pressure, the slap, that was our parents' choice. I took a breath, steady, deliberate. The penthouse is mine, bought with my money, earned through my work. If you want one, I suggest you earn yours. You're cruel, Isabella cried. No, I said softly. I just stopped volunteering to be the family sacrifice. There was movement on the line, chairs scraping, whispers spreading, the quiet hum of a room trying to process its own collapse. Then Victor's voice, closer now, steady and composed. Natalie, the reports have been filed. Your parents understand their options. The ball's in their court now. Thank you, Victor, I said quietly. I'm sorry it came to this. So am I, he replied. And by the way, the wedding photographer captured everything. He's already sent us the high-resolution files, in case we need them, for legal purposes. A low groan came through the line. My father's voice, broken. 48 hours, Robert, Victor said one last time. A public apology, or I call the board. Natalie, see you Monday. The line went dead. I stood alone in my penthouse, the city shimmering beyond the glass. For the first time that night I could breathe. My cheeks still burned, but something deeper had eased, a tension I hadn't realized I'd been carrying for 32 years. Within 2 hours my phone overflowed with messages. The video had gone beyond viral, it was everywhere. Headlines read, "Wealthy parents demand daughter's $3 million penthouse at wedding." Trending across 3 platforms, Isabella had called 15 times. I didn't answer. My phone buzzed again. A message from my mother. "You've ruined everything. Your sister's wedding is in shambles. Guests are leaving. Are you happy now?" My father's message was shorter. "We need to talk. Please." But the most interesting texts came from people I hadn't expected. 3 of my father's biggest clients had seen the video. "Robert, I'm concerned about what I just watched. We need to discuss our contract." Jim Patterson, Patterson Industries. "This behavior is deeply troubling. My wife insists we reconsider our partnership." David Kim, Kim Electronics. "I don't do business with men who hit their daughters. The deal's off." Sarah Williams, Williams Logistics. That last one, a $3 million annual contract, gone. Then came the group chat I'd almost forgotten about. Ethan's family group, the one I'd been added to months ago. His mother. "We're leaving. This is humiliating." His father. "The wedding is postponed until we understand what kind of family we're marrying into." The wedding had collapsed, and I wasn't even there. A final ping, a private text from Victor. "Your father just called. He's panicking about the clients. 3 more reached out to me, all expressing concern." I stared at the city lights outside my window, feeling nothing but quiet clarity. Sometimes karma doesn't shout, it just broadcasts. Then came the most satisfying message of all, from someone who'd filmed everything. "Your mother fainted when she realized the CEO of Liang Global Investments was your boss. Like, actually fainted. They had to call an ambulance." I poured myself a glass of wine from the bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion. If standing up for myself wasn't special, then what was? Another buzz, a text from my assistant. "Boss, you're trending. Also, 5 executive recruiters have reached out asking if you're open to new opportunities. Apparently, standing up to toxic families is the new leadership flex." I laughed, a real laugh, the first one all day. By Monday morning, the corporate world had chosen sides, and it wasn't even close. The video had spread through every major business network in the city. The story was crystal clear. The successful daughter who refused to be bullied by her powerful parents. The CEO who stepped in to protect his most valuable executive from family exploitation. My father's company had lost 6 contracts in total. The expansion plan he'd been bragging about for 2 years. Dead. Without Victor's capital and with clients fleeing in droves, downsizing wasn't optional anymore. It was inevitable. Isabella's honeymoon in Bali was cancelled. Not by her, but by Ethan's family. They wanted to re-evaluate the relationship dynamics before moving forward. The wedding gifts were quietly returned, but the most unexpected fallout came from my own company. Victor called me into his office Monday afternoon. "The board wants to promote you," he said without preamble. "Senior Vice President of Global Operations." I blinked. "Because I got slapped at a wedding?" He smiled faintly. "Because you stood your ground under immense social pressure. You protected company assets. You kept your composure in an extreme situation. That's leadership. And the fact that I had to intervene only showed you know when to leverage resources wisely. Natalie, I've seen seasoned executives crumble under family pressure. You didn't. You won." The promotion came with a 40% salary increase and a generous stock option package, enough to buy another penthouse if I wanted one. But I didn't need another. The one I had was perfect. A symbol of everything I'd built without my family's money, their influence, or their approval. I donated my raise and bonus to a women's shelter that helps survivors escape toxic and abusive households. It felt like the right thing to do. My father's public apology came exactly 47 hours after Victor's ultimatum expired. It was stiff, clearly written by his legal team, but it did the job. "I apologized to my daughter, Natalie Carter, for my inappropriate conduct during a recent family event. I acknowledge her professional accomplishments and her rightful ownership of her personal assets. This matter is now resolved. My mother refused to apologize. Instead, she went on social media and called me ungrateful, selfish, and corrupted by corporate culture. Her post was screenshotted and shared thousands of times, usually with comments like, "Well, now we know where the problem started." It didn't take long for people to label her exactly what she was, a narcissist. A week later, Isabella texted me. "You've ruined my life. Ethan's family is making us go to counseling before they'll approve the marriage. They think my family is toxic." "They're not wrong," I replied. "I hate you." "I know." The extended family split down the middle. Some sided with my parents, preaching that family should always come first. Others reached out privately, sharing their own stories of being the scapegoat, the ATM, the one who was never enough. Even my cousin Derek texted, "I'm sorry for what I said. I didn't know what you were dealing with." For the first time, I didn't feel the need to explain myself. A message came from Aunt Patricia, my mother's older sister. "Your mother was wrong. I'm proud of you for standing your ground." But the most surprising text came from Ethan himself. I didn't know about the penthouse ambush. If I had, I would have stopped it. "Isabella needs to grow up. Maybe this was the wake-up call she needed. I'm sorry your mother hit you. That was assault, plain and simple." At least someone in that family understood decency. The next day, I changed the locks on my penthouse. Security received a list of names permanently banned from the building. My parents' names were at the top. James, the doorman who'd known me for 3 years, pulled me aside as I came home. "Ms. Carter," he said quietly. "I saw the video. Congratulations. My daughter went through something similar. Family isn't always family, you know." He smiled, and for the first time so did I. That night, I blocked my entire immediate family on every social media platform. No dramatic announcement, no explanation, just silence, and the quiet freedom that comes from cutting access to your peace. Work became my focus. The promotion meant managing teams across 12 countries. I threw myself into it, building something meaningful, without the weight of family expectation. And Victor, he became more than just a boss. He became the mentor my father never was. Over coffee one morning, he said, "The best revenge is a life well lived, without them." 3 months later, a text came from an unknown number. A photo of Isabella's wedding gift, the one I'd sent once the dust had settled. A certificate for 6 months of family therapy. "Insulting," the message read. "Necessary," I replied, then I blocked the number. My penthouse became what it was always meant to be, a sanctuary no one could demand, diminish, or devalue. Floor-to-ceiling windows over the city reminded me every day that I had built something they could never take, not for lack of trying. 6 months later, the noise had faded. A new reality had taken root. I was thriving. The senior vice president role led to a feature in Forbes 40 Under 40. The article said nothing about the wedding. It focused on my strategy for expanding into the Asia-Pacific, on building markets from the ground up, on leading without apology. And that was the point. Not the slap, not the spectacle, the work, the life, mine. His company eventually stabilized, but it never recovered its former standing. He looked 10 years older within 6 months. I heard he'd started therapy. Too little, too late, but at least it was something. My mother kept replaying her victim story to anyone willing to listen, about the ungrateful daughter who chose money over family. Most people had seen the video, they knew better. As for Isabella, her marriage to Ethan lasted exactly 4 months. The counseling sessions had exposed deeper issues: entitlement, lack of accountability, the expectation that others would provide for her. Ethan's family had been right to worry. The divorce was quiet, but final. She texted me once afterward. "I hope you're happy, you got what you wanted." "No," I replied, "I got what I earned, that's the difference." The family I found at Carter and West Capital became the real one. The kind that celebrated wins together, stood by each other through storms, and never once asked me to sacrifice my success for their comfort. Victor and his wife invited me to their family dinner. He had 2 daughters, both in college, and both told me they looked up to me. "You're proof that we never have to shrink ourselves for anyone," one of them said. And she was right. That meant more than any approval my blood relatives could ever give. So, here's what I learned from that wedding night disaster. Blood doesn't make a family. Respect does. Success isn't something you owe to people who never supported your journey. And sometimes the strongest thing you can say to a toxic family is nothing at all. My penthouse is still mine. Every morning, I watch the sunrise through those floor-to-ceiling windows, coffee in hand, grateful for the peace I fought to protect. It's not just a property, it's proof that I chose myself when everyone expected me to choose them. If you're struggling with a family that demands more than they give, people who claim your victories as their own, or expect you to burn yourself to keep them warm, remember this. Your boundaries matter. Your success is yours, and your peace is worth more than their approval. You don't owe anyone the fruits of your hard-won growth just because you share DNA. You never have to accept disrespect in the name of keeping the family peace. And you certainly never have to endure abuse, emotional or physical, to be considered a good daughter. Because the truth is, a good daughter doesn't destroy herself to make others comfortable. She learns to stand tall and live free. Just like that slap, or the years of being treated as less than, freedom came at a price. I lost my blood family, but what I gained was worth it. Self-respect, genuine connections, a life built on my own terms. Your story might look different, but the principle is the same. You deserve to be celebrated, not tolerated. Choose the people who choose you, not only when they need something, but always. So ask yourself, what boundaries do you need? What will you do today to protect them? Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever had to choose between family approval and self-respect, you're not alone. Drop the word boundary in the comments if you believe in protecting yourself from toxic family patterns. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that choosing yourself is not selfish, it's survival. Subscribe and ring the bell for more stories about healthy boundaries and the families we choose for ourselves. And tell me, do you stand with Natalie for defending her worth? Or do you believe family should always come first? If you've ever had to choose peace over approval, type peace in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. Because somewhere out there, another woman is finding the strength to do the same.